This video is sponsored by Skillshare.
What's going on, guys? My name is Ryan Savin and I'm the crafter at Little King Goods here in sunny Morrison, California. We're not at all in California, we're in Canada where it's freezing, hence my hoodie here. But anyway, today's video is all about how I create my designs in Adobe Illustrator. By no means is this a crazy in-depth tutorial about how to use Illustrator. I'm just gonna show you how I quickly transform shapes into cool minimalist wallets and other sorts of things. Today I'm gonna be recreating this little design within Illustrator and just show you some of the tips and tricks that help me make things faster, accurately, so I can send over to my laser printer or to my die maker, or just keep on file so that if I wanna change the design later, I can quite easily manipulate the file. Let's get into it, and I hope you enjoy and I hope you learned something today. All right, let's do this. So I use both PC and Mac, and the keyboard's a little bit different. So when I say Control on a PC, I really mean Command on a Mac, or when I say Alt on a PC, I mean Option on a Mac. So just keep that in mind if you're following along or using Illustrator on both platforms. This is a little design that I created the other day, so I'm just gonna recreate this. So we're gonna go up to File, New, and find Letter. If you're in Europe or somewhere that uses A4, you can use A4. So let's go Letter, and I'm just gonna set this up to millimeters, and I'm just gonna go Create. So now what we wanna do is we wanna just create our basic shape. So I'm gonna flip over to this first one here, and so we're gonna create this little shape right here. And to do that, we're gonna start off with a rectangle. Over here on the side, you're gonna see this line segment. You can click and hold and select rectangle. And so we're just gonna draw a basic rectangle. And up here on the top, you can see that you have your width and your height. I know that I want my width to be 80 and my height to be 110 millimeters. So let's do that. So our width is gonna be 80, and then our height is gonna be 110. And there we go, there's our first shape. So we can hit this selection tool. You can click it here in the panel, or you can hit V on your keyboard. It doesn't really matter. And here we go, we've got our first rectangle. Our second rectangle, what we can do is hit Alt or Option, click and drag. You can hit Shift too to keep it in the same horizontal plane. And then this one, according to our other one, let's see how high it is. It's 80 wide and 90 high. So let's do that. Let's go back over here. We're gonna go at 80 wide and 90 high. This is for this piece right here. Okay, cool. Now that we got our basic shapes, we're ready to rock. So right now we're gonna make this little swoop part right here so that it's a little bit easier to take the cards out of the pockets. You're not fighting with the flat edge, so here we go. We're gonna go over here to our tool panel. We're gonna click and hold, and we're gonna go to the ellipse tool. So let's draw out an ellipse, click and drag. You can hit spacebar and move your mouse around, and that will move the entire shape. So if you let go of the space bar, it'll just keep it static there and it'll size accordingly. But if you hit space bar, you can move around the entire shape. So what we're trying to do is just figure out that this bottom part here is going to be our cutout, and you'll see how I'm gonna do that. So you can manipulate your shape here, make it more of an aggressive cutout, but we wanna make it pretty shallow. That looks pretty good. So this is a very key next step, aligning shapes together. So the shapes that you want to align together, you're gonna click, select, you can hold Shift, or you can click a bounding box around all of them. And then up here in your top panel, you can see the different types of aligning positions. So here is the horizontal align. If you hit this, the shapes will align their edges together on the left side, or you can hit the right side and they'll align, or you can hit middle and they will align their middles, which is what we'd like. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good. So we're gonna select both shapes by clicking and dragging. So we're gonna go over here to the Pathfinder menu, and if you don't have it up there, you can go to Window and you can go down to Pathfinder, and it should pop out. And over here we have two main modes that we're gonna be playing around with. The first one, when I click it, you'll see what happens. It joins the shapes together. And that is useful for many different applications, but we're not gonna be using that one today. So I'm just gonna go Undo. We're gonna use the second mode here, and that is minus front. So whatever is on the front, it's gonna take away from the back. If your shape is on the back, so if it's like this, if your shape is behind, it's going to take away from that shape. And so we don't wanna do that. We wanna make this shape come out in the front. So to do that, you're gonna hit Control or Command, and then the right bracket, square bracket. And then you can toggle between the right and left square bracket key on your keyboard, and it'll bring it to the front or to the back. It's pretty much just like a layer, and it's not very hard to figure out once you've played around with it for a while. So we're gonna bring that to the front, select both of them, and then I'm gonna use this shape mode on the side, and I'm gonna use minus front. And there we go. We've got our cutout on the top, which is looking pretty good. I think I might just change it around a little bit, so I just undid that. I'm gonna bring this in a little bit. Give it a little bit more of a space between here and here. If you want to resize the shape by keeping the center placed right there, you can hit Alt and Shift, and it'll keep the center. If you don't hit Shift, the whole shape will resize sideways and not the whole shape at the same time. So if I hit Shift, the whole shape resizes. If I let go of Shift, it just goes sideways. Also, if you don't hit Alt or Option, it doesn't resize from the center point. So I think I'm gonna keep it there. Make sure that both of these are selected and that they're in the center. Select both of them and then go to the shape modes and minus. And I think that looks pretty good. Before we continue, I just want to talk about this video sponsor, and I'm sure you guys have seen me or heard about Skillshare through me a million times, and there is a good reason for that. If you're curious and creative like me, you know that you can't just sit idly by doing nothing, you have to create, but sometimes we are limited because we do not know how to use tools or certain things to help us create. Skillshare is an online learning community that has thousands of classes for curious and creative people. My whole business was built on creativity and just being curious. And I wish I had a platform like Skillshare back in the day, which would have saved me a lot of time because I scoured the internet forever trying to find things. And with Skillshare, it's in one place, one learning community that you can learn a ton of things. Whether it's Illustrator, like what I'm doing right now, or Photoshop, or even culinary, creative writing. You wanna learn how to juggle, there's a class for that. You wanna learn how to 3D laser print, there's a class for that. No matter what you wanna do, Skillshare has definitely got you covered. The great thing about Skillshare is that it's curated for learning, meaning there are no ads and there are constant new classes being updated all the time. And for less than $10 a month with an annual subscription, you are getting all of this community, all of this learning, all of these classes at a price that is so worth it. One class that I think would be highly beneficial, especially if you're starting out in Adobe Illustrator, is called Adobe Illustrator CC Essentials Training by Daniel Scott. He's an Adobe certified trainer, so he knows exactly what he's talking about. He goes through things step by step for those people who have never even seen or touched Illustrator. What I like about Daniel and his style of teaching is that he explains things thoroughly, he's very to the point, and he really takes time to make sure you understand what he's doing. This holiday season, why don't you give the gift of learning, especially to someone who is creative and is just curious about design or curious about just learning in general. It is the perfect gift. And since Skillshare is sponsoring this video, the first 1,000 subscribers to click the link in the description below will get a free trial of premium Skillshare. I mean, what's better than that, a free trial? So why not explore new skills, deepen existing passions, and get lost in curiosity and creativity? Skillshare is definitely the place to be. All right, let's get back to it. If you wanna make your design a little bit more spicy or add that secret sauce to it, I'm gonna show you a little thing that I do that I think looks really good. If you hold Alt or Option and you use your mouse wheel to scroll in and out, you can zoom in and out. Also, if you hit spacebar, you can click and drag around your screen, which helps you reposition your artboard, which is really cool and helpful. So then we're gonna go to this direct selection tool. You can hit A or click here, and then you can click and drag around the top part here. And you'll notice that there are these little bullseye looking things. And these things are your corner radius tool. Up here you can see that the corners are 0. What we wanna do is just wanna make them a little bit curvy once they're selected. So we select them, we can go boop, 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 and it brings it down. You can change them manually, so we can hit 5, and that just makes it look a little bit nicer, a little bit cleaner, and especially if you're gonna be cutting this out with the laser or giving it to your die maker, you're gonna make it look real nice, and it just adds that class to your design. Also on the bottom here, we can select just the bottom and change this to 10 millimeters. I like doing 10, just looks nice. And then over here, same thing, 10 millimeters. This is your front part of your pocket. And boom. All right, guys, we're almost there. Let's keep going. This is fun. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna make this little angled pocket, and I like to do it a certain way by subtracting other shapes from other shapes, like what we did up in this card pocket. There are many ways of doing it, but I'll show you my way. So now we're gonna go back up here and we're gonna click and hold and we're gonna go to the star tool. Click and drag, and mine is already a triangle. If yours is a star, that's fine. You can keep adding more points by pushing up or down on your keyboard. So I'm just gonna subtract those points until I get a triangle. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna make this triangle like that, and then we're gonna manipulate this triangle. We're gonna make it go sideways. And then now the goal is to place this here and make that angled pocket like this. So what I do is I'm just gonna manipulate this a little bit, make it not so angled. And you can do it however you like. It's your design. It's good to be creative, and I think it's fun that way. Once we get that angle nice, let's look at the other one. This is a little bit more of a shallow angle. This is a little bit too steep. And there we go. I think that looks pretty good. So we can copy by holding Alt or Option and Shift, which keeps it on the same plane. And then we can right click, transform, reflect on the vertical axis and hit OK. Now you've got two triangles that we're going to subtract from the bigger shape here. I still think it's a little bit too much. I'm going to change that around a little bit. Okay. I think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to delete that. Alt or Option, click, drag, Shift, and then transform, reflect, and there we go. Again, we're gonna wanna align these two pieces to the edges of the project so that you get a uniform and mirror image of each other. To do that, click the triangle and the big shape, come up to your Align panel here, hit that, and then do the same for the other side, and you're good to go. So now let's select all of the shapes, come over to the Pathfinder and then hit the minus front. And now you got a really cool angled front pocket, which is simple. Trust me, this is a little bit much if you've never used Illustrator before, but in time it becomes second nature, I promise you. You just gotta keep at it, just like with anything else. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're gonna add those cool little curved corners just for some pizzazz. So let's get our direct selection tool. We can hit A, and V will change it back. So A will make it that white cursor. Select the corners that you want to round, and we can go up here and add some curves. And I think that's cool. You can grab these little nodes too and play around with them. It's pretty much up to your taste and to your liking, but I think that looks pretty good. So now we're gonna hit V for the selection tool, and now we can place it on top of our other one. And you can see that we have the same pattern as we're creating here, which looks really cool. And that didn't take very long. If I wasn't talking through this, this would take you probably 5 minutes. Okay, we could stop there. We could be done. So what you could do is you could just use this as a template that you could print out on a piece of paper and then glue it to some poster board and then trace it directly onto your leather. But if you want to send it to your laser cutter, I use my GLOWFORGE. So what you're gonna wanna do is you can add holes to this. Stitching holes. So what we can do is we're gonna grab this, we're gonna hit Alt, click and drag, which copies it. I'm hitting Shift to make it center. And now I'm going to make my stitching line. And the easiest way to make a stitching line, I think, is to already use the shape that is made. And we're just gonna use this outside perimeter to put here as our stitch line. We don't need this part right here because that is not part of the stitch line. So I am going to hit the direct selection tool, select this, and hit delete. That takes off the top part. And right now, we pretty much have a copy of the other shape without the top. Another thing to note is that this has a fill and a stroke. Right now, it has a fill of white, so we can take away that by coming over here, make sure that our shape is selected, and come over here and hit the none part with that little red strike through that box, hit that, and then you'll see that it takes away that fill. So we're gonna use this as our stitch line. But first what we wanna do is we wanna make sure that this radius out here on the corner is a little bit smaller than the radius on this corner. Because right now they're the same. If we make this the stitch line by making it smaller, you're gonna see that it doesn't look very nice. It's kind of nice here and nice here, but this doesn't look very good. So we're gonna clean that up. To do that, I'm going to come to the direct selection tool, make sure those are selected. And since it's 10 millimeters, it's the same radius as this, we're gonna bring it down a bit. And I find that 7 millimeters worked the best when I made this file the other day. And so the stitch line I normally do is 4 millimeters, and 4 millimeters is just something that I've gone with over the years. My spacing between my holes are 4 millimeters, and I just make my stitch line 4 millimeters from the edge, and I think it looks pretty good. In order to do that, I'm gonna hit Control R, which brings up my rulers. And I'm just gonna bring this all the way up to the top left corner. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring in my guides by just simply clicking on the ruler and dragging it over to 4 millimeters on the side here. I'm gonna drag another one down, 4 millimeters on the side here. If you look to the left-hand side, you can see that this is 5 millimeters, this is 4 millimeters, and then I'm gonna click and drag another one over here from 80, 75, right here. So 110 minus 4 millimeters is right there. So now this is where the stitch line is going to reside. Another thing you want to make sure of is that your guides are locked so that you can't mistakenly move them. You can move your pattern, but you can't move the guides, which is good. So now we're going to grab the stitch line and we're going to bring it up here. And it is the same size as your pattern. We haven't manipulated it yet. So we're going to use these little handles here. We're going to bring it in. Make sure you're clicking on the stitch line one. Bring it up. And it'll pretty much snap to those lines, which is helpful. So once we've got these stitch lines all centered up, you'll notice that the stitch line goes all the way to the top here. We're gonna hit the direct selection tool and we're going to click on the top of that stitch line, hold shift and bring it down until we hit these guides right there. So now if we hit Control semicolon, we can take those guides away. If we hit Control R, we can take the rulers away. I'm gonna leave the rulers up just because. And so now we have that stitch line. The next step we want to do is we want to click on that stitch line. We're going to come over here to the stroke option. We're going to hit that. If it's not there, go to Window, Stroke, and it'll pop up. All right, so we're going to click on this stitch line, make sure we have it selected. We're going to come over to here and we're going to hit the weight of that line to be 1 millimeter. It's a little thick right now, but don't worry, we're going to change it. It's going to turn into holes. So we're going to come over here. The caps should be on this little curved part, the round cap, and then we're going to hit dashed line. So the dash is going to be set at 0 and my gap I like to be at 4 millimeters. So I'm just gonna hit 4. And now we've got those holes in a line here. It's still a stroke and it's not individual holes yet, but I'm gonna show you how to change that around, especially when you're working with a laser cutter. Just a quick mention, these two little things right here, you're gonna see that this changes this part right here. So it's exactly 4 millimeters in between these holes, but we wanna make sure that it covers the entire length of this stroke. So this is going to make all the dashes in the corner path ends adjust to fit properly. So when I hit this, it makes everything fit nicely from where we started the stroke to where we ended it. So now that we have our stitch line, we have to change it into a shape. Right now it's just a stroke, like I said. So we're gonna go to Object, Expand Appearance, and then Object, Expand. And then it's gonna ask you, do you wanna make it into a fill and a stroke? And we wanna say yes. So now they're individual shapes. And what we can do now is we can select all of this. We can come back to our pathfinder and we can subtract them from the shape. And that is actually made holes inside this outer shape. I'm just gonna change the stroke, change it to 0.25. I just like working with that stroke. It just looks nicer and cleaner. And there you go. We have our shape with the holes in there now. All we have to do now is transfer that to this shape here. So I went back and I undid making these into holes. So right now they're just shapes on top of this shape here. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna transfer these shapes to this panel right here. And so this has a fill right now. If you see, it's covered in white. I'm gonna take that out. Actually, I'm gonna group these so it doesn't move. Then I can line these two up by selecting them and then coming down to the bottom. And there you go, they're fully selected. So now I'm going to click on this shape right here, ungroup them because I want to transfer these dots to this panel. So I click on the dots, I hit Shift, click this, and then I'm going to hit Alt, click and drag. And now I've taken just the dots and also this card pocket. But I don't need this card pocket there anymore. So I'm just gonna click that, delete it, and there we go. So now all we have to do is get rid of these dots because they're no longer needed. I'm gonna go to my direct selection, click and drag around the dots that I don't need. They're gonna highlight. I'm gonna hit delete. Sometimes you have to hit it twice. Make sure you get all of those little dots out of the way, and there we go. We're almost there, guys. We're really, really close. All we have to do now is click and select both of those, come to your Pathfinder, hit the minus front button here, and then also with here, we do the same thing. Hit the minus front. If you get this message, that means that you need to add a fill to this part. So you come over to this here and you hit the fill, the white fill, and you'll notice that the dots are gone. That's okay. So we're gonna click and select that card pocket, hit Control, left bracket, and then you'll see that it moves to the back and those dots come to the front. Now we can click, select all of it, go over to our Pathfinder, and you'll see that it works. I like to select all of this, and I like to make this stroke 0.25 millimeters. It just looks cleaner, and I like it a lot. All right, there we go. We've got our pockets. We're almost there. We're just gonna save this to a proper file format, and we should be good to go. If you wanna use this file just for printing and sticking it on cardstock and then transferring it to your leather, then this is fine. You really only need 2 pieces. But if you wanna laser cut it, you're gonna have to copy and duplicate those 2 pockets so that you can cut out 4 pieces on your leather. Now that that's all good, we're ready to go, we're happy with our design, we are going to save this. And in order for this to be used on a laser printer, you're gonna have to save it as an SVG file. So we're gonna go to File, Save As. For now, I'm just gonna save it to my desktop, and I'm gonna save it as V1. Come down to Save File Type and SVG, and you're gonna hit Save, and you're going to hit OK. So now you see the V1. If we open it up, you have it. It's all ready to go. You can send this to your laser printer and it'll print it and cut it out really nice and easy. You can also send this file as a PDF. You can save it as a PDF and send it to your die maker and they can make it quite easily just from that PDF, but it needs to be in a vector form. All right, guys, that's a wrap. I hope you learned something today. I hope that what you saw might have inspired you to make your own designs. And it's really cool. Once you learn how to use Illustrator, there are endless opportunities and endless ways of making things. You'll find that you'll get better and better as you use it more often, and you'll find quicker ways, shortcuts of how to create things faster. What I like about using Illustrator is that I can go back into my designs and manipulate things ever so slightly just to make it that much better. All right, guys, if you like this video, you know what to do. Thumbs up, subscribe, share it, and if you get stuck, you can always rewatch it. Also, I just want to thank Skillshare again for sponsoring this video, and if you want to get more in depth with Illustrator, there are tons of classes on Skillshare that you can go check out. So do that, the free trial. You can't get much better than free, so take advantage of that. All right, guys, keep safe, have fun, design lots of things, get better at it, practice, 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 and in no time you'll be making incredible designs. All right, take care, we'll see you in the next one. Peace.